Hello and welcome back. In this video, we'll be looking at denial of service attack. Okay, you probably know about this now, but let's go over it. Basically, it's an action that prevents or impairs the authorized use of networks, systems, or applications by exhausting resources such as central processing units, memory, bandwidth, and disk space. Basically, you are disrupting the service so that legitimate users can no longer access them. Okay? Spoofing is often used to make tracing very difficult. So you spoof your IP address where all those packets are flooding in from, then you really can't trace it back. And that's a big issue, right? Distributed denial of service makes it even harder to pinpoint the original source of an attack, and we'll have a look at that very shortly. So there are many types of denial of service attacks, but typically it divides into those three: volume-based, protocol-based, and application. Since we are looking at network-based attacks, we'll be looking at volume-based attacks and protocol-based attacks. Okay, and basically we are able to exploit some vulnerabilities with those two aspects. Okay, so let's have a look at those examples. Ping or death. Okay, so this is good to know, although nowadays this is not applicable anymore. Basically, this is a classic denial of service attack, which was in the 80s, I believe. Basically flooding the ping command to the target. Okay? Once the capacity of the bandwidth it exceeds, the packets are discarded. Okay? And you can again avoid being identified by spoofing your location. Okay? Why did it work? Because at the time the bandwidth was very small, and ping, if you craft it well, you can increase the size of the payload in the ping. And therefore, by sending a lot of them, which you can generate very quickly, and the replying person has to respond to every single ping request, so that gets overflooded. The bandwidth gets overflooded on the host machine. Nowadays, we have quite a lot of bandwidth. The bandwidth is really high for ping to be filling it up. Okay, and that's why the ping or death no longer is an attack that you will consider be doing. Okay, nevertheless, there will be some other examples that you'll be doing in your TCP/IP lab later. So move on to protocol. Going back, but still you can exhaust a lot of volumes by creating a lot of traffic. Okay, we'll have a look at the DDoS later. Okay, but basically the next item is the protocol exploit, which is exploiting how the protocols are established. For example, SYN flooding is like a volume attack exploiting the protocol design flaw. Basically, you continuously send a crafted SYN packet to the target, and the server will send back the acknowledgement packet, but the attacker never replies. So that means you never complete your three-way handshake. Okay? Legitimate SYN packets have to wait while the other malicious SYN packets are processed. And typically there are some waiting periods where the server will try to keep that particular connection open, and therefore this exploits that design flaw of the TCP three-way handshake. Okay? So attacker sends a bunch of SYN, spoofed ones, and the victim sends the SYN egg. You probably don't get a response, or you may get a reset response, which means the client never really initiated that connection. Okay. So you can read that, but that's just what I just described. So DOS attack is slightly different to DDoS attack. So DOS attack is you have a single computer and you're flooding the target, whereas the DDoS attack you have a lot of other computers and they're all attacking the same target. And usually you have a single master computer that controls those, and we usually call them zombie computers. You probably heard that term before. And especially in last week's series of videos where you plant like a Trojan horses on those computers, so you have a remote access to them, and then you instruct them to do something malicious, like orchestrate a denial of service attack, a distributed denial of service attack. Okay, so DDoS is still volume based. You are just sending a huge number of packets to the target to take it down. Okay, use of multiple systems to carry out denial of service attack. Gain access to the zombie computer, so you need to send some malwares or gain some remote access. So see last week's lectures or a couple of videos back. One attacker controls all the zombie computers, so it is actually one person doing it, but they just have access to a lot of other computers, and there may be more hierarchies in controlling zombies as well. So this dude up here may also be a zombie, just a hierarchy up than the working zombies. Okay. Okay, moving on. So reflection attack is one that is a variant of the DDoS attack. Basically, we can use legitimate servers as an intermediate step to carry out DDoS attacks. Sometimes you don't have any access to your zombie computers, or zombie computers are not strong enough. Then what we can do is actually utilize some legitimate servers and make them create packets for you. So what you have to do is spoof the packets with the target address and send it to the intermediate servers. So you are pretending to be the target, but all of your zombie computers are pretending to be those targets. Okay? And the intermediate server will reply back to the target instead of you, because you have spoofed it. Okay? If enough packets are generated, the target will be denied of service to legitimate requests. So it kind of looks like this. So we have a bunch of zombies, okay, but we have limited numbers. So we're trying to use the intermediate servers as our reflectors. So hacker controls the zombies, and legitimate servers gets utilized. Victim spoofed IP gets sent. So if each zombie sends a packet to every single legitimate servers, okay, then it's going to be the multipliers of the number of zombies times the number of servers that you utilize targeting the single target. Okay, so the victim here gets flooded with the SYN packets, and basically that's going to overload its bandwidth. Another example of DDoS attack is amplification attack. The idea is to broadcast the function of the network. Okay, so we are again using some legitimate network functionalities, but exploiting that to convert them into an attack. The zombie sends spoofed messages with the target IP address to the broadcast IP address. Okay, all systems in the subnet will reply to the victim. So this is actually quite an interesting attack. So let's have a look at an example, which is a smurf attack. So how this happens is that an attacker sends a broadcast packet to the router, and what the router do is it broadcasts it to every single device in the network. And since this was formulated to be from the victim, which for this instance is 9.9.9.9, then all the devices will reply back to the victim with the response. Okay, so this way you only need a very small number of packets to generate a large quantity. This is effective if you don't have much zombies, but you have a lot of devices in that particular subnet, which you can target the victim. Okay, so to prevent denial of service attacks, this is quite difficult because identifying legitimate traffic out of attack traffic is quite difficult to do. Okay, if you think about traffics being now encrypted, that makes it extra harder for us to find out. So, you may be called with the question, is this just a normal, legitimate traffic in high volume, or is it actually attack? And those are some very difficult things to answer, because when you need some throughput, it's usually like a very quick. So for instance, say you're streaming a YouTube video, it's not going to be a constant speed throughout the connection. You're going to have a very big spike to download a chunk, you buffer it, and then once you go there, the traffic is quite low until you use up all your buffer, and then it's going to have a spikes again. Okay, so how do we really differentiate denial of service, right? So there are 4 steps that you should be taking into consideration. First one is the prevention and preemption. Basically, we want to get rid of all the vulnerabilities as much as possible, things like patch known vulnerabilities and flaws. Okay. The next step is to understand the detection and filtering. Okay. This is involving the firewall rules and intrusion detection systems. Those items we'll be looking at in the next few videos. Okay. And also we need to be able to trace back and identify attacks as much as possible. Things like conducting forensics and analysis to understand where the traffics might be coming from or what they might be targeting, so to understand the scope of the attack. And finally, the reaction. Okay? Once we have observed some attack, we can review the security controls and update accordingly to prevent that. Okay? But nevertheless, all those 4 tasks are very difficult things. And really is coming to it really comes down to understanding how the attack has influenced your systems and trying to come up with different ways to mitigate them accordingly. Okay. Otherwise, we'll stop here. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.